This is an opportunity for you to ask any questions. This is a very unique opportunity. We are thrilled to have this be a part of our program. We have been working with Equilibria and Equilibrium Health and Fisher with FIT for about 3 months on this program. And I want you to take a look at yourself right now. You are the inaugural group. You are going to go out and change healthcare. 250,000 people die a year from errors in medicine. And let me be very clear, that's the reported numbers. That's what's reported. I can assure you the numbers are far greater than that. I can assure you. Okay? So sit back, enjoy this, enjoy the intentional communication, be intentional with what you do every day. We've been working with this since July in EMS. I'm very, very happy to see the nursing department has joined us. Distinguished guests, Methodist Hospital, Lake City EMS is here, the Texas Department of State Health Services, Montgomery County Health District, Angleton EMS is here, Galveston EMS here. Have I missed any other distinguished guests? I really appreciate everybody. I'm sorry, Chevron, right? Equilibria. I think Baker Hughes was on our list. Chevron will be arriving today. So we have some great opportunities. You young students, there are brilliant minds in this room. Take the opportunity. I spend every opportunity I can to ask these people questions. And I'm not an early morning person. I will get up and have breakfast with them at 6 a.m. just to take the opportunity to sit with them and learn from them. I'm 50 years old, and in the last 6 months, I've learned more than I've learned in 20 years. So please be intentional with what you're doing. And with that, I'm going to get my notebook and take notes. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks very much, Chris. Good morning. My name is Rob Fisher. I own a company called Fisher Improvement Technologies. For the last 25 years or so, we've helped organizations and individuals understand how and why people make mistakes, especially mistakes that can prove to be catastrophic, and what you can do about those. Sometimes you can prevent them, sometimes you can reduce the probability of a mistake or an error, and sometimes you have to mitigate the consequences of those mistakes and errors. I got my start in U.S. Naval nuclear power. I was special operations submarines on 2 different submarines, served for 10 years. I was awarded the Navy Achievement Medal twice and the Presidential Unit Citation for the special operations that we did. And during that time, I learned a lot about how and why humans do what they do. I moved on to traditional nuclear power, not too far from here. I'm an original Houstonian. Grew up here in Houston in the Northwest. As Houston grew, my parents just kept moving out farther. I moved down to South Texas Nuclear Project down in south of Bay City, Texas. Spent about 10 years down there. And during that time, what happened was the plant got in trouble. This is the late 1980s. How many of you have ever heard of 3 Mile Island? How about Chernobyl? How many of you have heard of Chernobyl? So after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, people started asking the question, if we would have put somebody else on the panel that day, would they have done the same thing? And what do you think the human error experts said? Anybody?
Probably so.
Probably so. And that's exactly right. He says, well, that's not good. We need to figure out what drives that. So a guy in England wrote a book called Human Error. And his name is James Reason. My job was to translate the theory of human error and human performance into the practical application. I wasn't an operator. I was a worker. I was in the field. I was touching things. So I guess I got good at it because they started farming me out. I formed my first company in 1992, and we've been consulting ever since. My e-colors are yellow over blue. How many of you did your e-colors? Are there any other yellow over blues in here? A couple of yellow over blues? Okay, fantastic. So my e-colors are yellow over blue. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. But some of my strengths are I'm a pretty engaging person. But I can also get scared in situations like this. It's funny because somebody asked me, are you nervous about today? And I said, no, I'm not nervous. I'm scared. He said, well, what are you scared of? You do this all the time. I said, I'm scared they won't listen. I'm scared they won't take what we say to them, take what we talk about, and take that into their lives and use it day to day. Take it to work day to day. I've been on the development committee for several elements. The latest one related to medical was the American Association of Medical Instrumentation. And that related to how do we reduce the probability somebody's going to make a mistake with medical instrumentation. How many of you think technology in medicine is moving pretty quickly right now? Pretty fast. Did you know that the robotics in medical are at a place now where a doctor can spend 10 hours learning robotics, where they've operated manually for 25 years. They can spend 10 hours certifying on robotics and be certified to perform operations with robotics. How many of you think the failure modes may be different in manual operations versus robotics? To me, it's the equivalent of telling somebody who's a really good bush pilot or a really good biplane, crop duster, here's the keys to the jet. As long as you can fly it, you're going to be okay. Would that make any sense to you guys if we did that? Okay, look, I'm from Houston. This is yes. This is no. This is I don't care. And I'll take it. Would that make any sense to you guys? If we gave somebody the keys to the jet like that? So, my goals today are pretty simple. I want to help you understand these elements of human error, but I want to give you something that you can walk away with in your career, whatever that career is, and use it tomorrow. I want to be able to give you something you can use in your life. We're going to talk a little bit about systems. And if you start thinking systemically, it doesn't matter whether you're at home, at work, or at play. I want to give you a little understanding of yourself and others, so that those interactions that you have are more fruitful, especially when times get tough. So I've kind of listed these. I'm also going to talk a little bit about error and managing it, but I want to talk about tainting. And here's what I mean by tainting. When I talk about tainting, from my perspective, it is the difference between what you hear here and what you see out there. What was it? Dana has thousands of years that you said of experience? Just a few. A few years of experience. But here's what happened to us in nuclear power. We were trained by the best. They knew what they were doing. They wrote the book on how to do things. They followed procedures. They were natural procedure followers. They created training programs and trained that would work. They educated us to the best of their ability, and by golly, we learned. And then what do you think happened? We went out into the field, and then somebody whispered in our ear and told us point blank, "That's all good. Glad you learned that. Now it's time to learn how it's really done." How many of you guys have heard that before in your life and in your career? The challenge with that is there is a huge amount of time, effort, and science that has gone into your education. It can't all be turned over by someone whispering in your ear and says, "That's great. This is how it's really done." Some of the things I'm going to tell you guys today, we're going to talk about, I hope you'll pull the string to learn more about it. It's not going to be the standard way you've heard about people making mistakes. You know, one of the reasons James Reason wrote that book is that as humans, our ego says, it can't be me, so it must be you. We have a natural inclination to blame. So when something bad happens, what do we tend to do? Blame. We tend to blame. Instead of trying to discover what it was about the system or the situation that drove that individual to do what they did. So we had to slice and dice that. It's easy to blame people, but we don't learn very much from blame. The reality is, I'm standing up here, and most of you have already figured out, I'm not a medical guy. And I hope you'll listen to me because I'm not a medical guy. I'm going to talk about people. I'm going to talk about personality tendencies. I'm going to talk about error in general. I'm going to talk about humans. And that, I think, most of us have in common. In fact, I think everybody in the room has that in common, except for one. Raise your paw. No, he's back there somewhere. There's a dog back there, in case you guys think. He's listening. He's not on his phone. But I do want to tell you why I got started in this. I just didn't know it at the time. My mother died from medical error when she was 40 years old. Right here at a hospital in Houston. Sorry, still tough today. And I didn't really know much about it at the time, but as I learned more and more about it, what I learned was that The error that she died from, the set of errors that she passed away from, were preventable. I think it really hit me the first time when the doctor and hospital bills arrived at our house 3 days after her funeral. And I watched my dad have to go through it. Now, this is 40 plus years ago now, but I think that it's always in the back of my head that the number that Christine gave is not on this slide. It's 98,000 people dying of medical error every year. This is a number that was generated by a report that took from about 1996 to the year 2000, and then was written by the Joint Commission on Medical Errors. And that was the ones that they could find. And as Christine said, that number is now about 250,000, and that's the one we can get people to report. We also had a case where I was given some medication, and I was told specifically how to take the medication. Put it on your tongue, let it dissolve. That's how this medication works. So my wife and I went and picked it up. We were driving home. She said, you need to take this now. I took it. What do you think I did? So you guys think I'm going to lie to you all there? I put it on my tongue, and I let it dissolve. My throat closed shut instantly, and we came about 2 inches from crashing into a truck. And my wife couldn't even get out of the car. When I called about that, the doctor said, well, it seems like you're okay now. When we got home and read it, it clearly stated on the receipt, you guys have seen this pharmaceutical receipt, clearly stated on the receipt in print that I can't read anymore, do not dissolve, swallow whole. How many of you in here would pay attention when someone told you, put it on your tongue and let it dissolve? I want you to put this on your tongue and let it dissolve. What do I want you to do? Okay, so we understand each other. How many of you would put it on your tongue and let it dissolve? Even though the written statement, I would tend to believe that individual and do what they said. Would that be a medical error? We all think? Okay? Would it be counted if we'd have crashed that car that day?
Yes.
As a medical error? No. A couple of years, not too long ago, someone that I know was having some surgery. They put something on their skin that they were allergic to. Now they realized the error almost immediately, but it was too late. It changed the recovery of this individual. Now while it wasn't a fatality, it changed that individual's life. And the question would be, why was something that the patient was allergic to sitting next to them to be applied? Does that sound like a medical error? It wasn't fatal, but we're talking about harm. Does that make sense to everybody? So this number is actually a little bit higher. Misdiagnosis of failure, surgical errors, medication errors. All of these errors are the ones that are easy to see, but we still have to dig for them. And I want to be clear, I'm not here to trash the medical industry. When we first started discovering these numbers, I'll never forget a friend of mine lives in England, and when we were talking about the Joint Commission and how many people die in medical error, here's what he said. Well, the healthcare system in the U.S. must really suck. We would never count ours. And that's exactly right. We were the first major country to start counting medical errors so we could do something about it. And then in that report, it really talks about it's a result of faulty systems, fragmented processes, and conditions that drive the error. Remember, James' reason, it's not about fault or blame. It's about understanding why people do what they do so we can keep them from doing it if it is systemically driven. Most of them are what? Say it for me. Systemically driven. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Talking about wrong medication errors. In wrong medication errors, there were some studies done not too long ago that said if you go into a hospital for more than 4 days, you stand a 40% chance of getting the wrong medication and the wrong dose at the right time. I just said, get me out of the hospital in 3 days. I don't want to experience that. But that's us, right? We're the ones that are dispensing that medication. Not necessarily that it's fault or blame. How many of you have heard of Dennis Quaid? The actor Dennis Quaid. Anybody heard what happened to his twins? How many of you heard the story of Dennis Quaid's twins? If you're a nursing or an EMT student, I really encourage you to go look at this story. Dennis Quaid's twins went to the hospital for some infection, and they were given a dose of heparin 1,000 times the prescribed dose. The fact that they didn't die is amazing. The fact that they didn't have permanent damage, absolutely amazing. When they started pulling the string, because this famous actor goes before Congress and starts to talk about it, they discover that about 8,000 to 20,000 children a year were given this elevated dosage of heparin. When you looked at the bottles, they looked exactly the same. When the hospitals store the bottles, guess where they store them? Right next to each other. What do you think that did to the error probability of a nurse that was under stress, duress, high time pressure? Now, it's not that the nurse didn't give the wrong dose of medication, but can you guys see that there were probably some things behind that drove that error? What do you guys think? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about how personalities are impacted by that. But today, I have a standard. I've only got a couple of hours with you. I'm going to talk for about an hour and a half-ish, and then I'm going to open it to about a half hour for questions. Will that be okay? So each of you has a card. As I'm talking, if you think of a question, don't try and just remember it till the end. Write it down on your card so we can either answer that question in this form, or I will stay around as long as you need me to answer those questions. Is that fair enough? Is this going okay so far? Yes. So I only have the standard, is it reasonable to believe? I can't take you on a journey that is 100% complete. I want to put some ideas in your mind that you'll play with later, that you'll take home with you and try. So is that a fair standard for today? Is it reasonable to believe something? And I'm going to ask that. So is it reasonable to believe? Is that okay standard for today? For the time that we have? Okay, cool. You see, we see things through different lenses, and they're very predictable. I notice most of you have your e-colors, you've done your e-colors. We're going to talk a little bit about that. That personality description is how we tend to see the world. So, how many of you know somebody who sees the world different from you, and they tend to react to different things than you do, and they're very close to you? Anybody ever had some conflict with someone close to you in your life because they actually react to things differently than you do? What are you smiling about? It's not her, is it? Just checking as far as you know. How many of you know somebody who has a fiery personality? How many of you know somebody who's fiery? Good. Anybody know somebody who's calm and moves water? How about somebody who has a real down-to-earth personality? They're really grounded. You know people like that? How about somebody who's squirrel? Anybody know people like that? Kind of flighty like the wind? So we know people who have these characteristics, and it takes all of us. Not one is better than the other, but we need to understand that piece. So I'd like to go through a scenario. And if you could just bring the lights up just a little bit. I'd like to go through a scenario with you. Would you guys mind playing along with me for a little bit? How many toppy colored reds do I have here? Give me a toppy colored red. Can I get 5 of you to stand up, please? 5 toppy colored reds. Just stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. 5 of you just come up here on stage with me if you don't mind. I should have done the toppy colored reds back. How about toppy colored greens? Now, toppy colored greens, you're going to have to raise your hand further than this. Toppy colored greens. Can you get 5 toppy colored greens to stand up with me? Now look, this room is full of toppy colored greens. You're going to have to. Reds? Yeah, just 5 reds. We're probably going to get 12 reds and 2 e-colored greens. Go ahead and come down, 2 of you. I know there's some more toppy colored greens. Just come down. Toppy colored reds, just come stand right over here for me. Great, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 12, 15, 17, and 2 toppy colored greens. How many of you have a toppy colored greens? Come on, you 3. How about toppy colored yellows? How many toppy colored yellows do you have? Come on up, 5 of them come up on the stage. Go and coffee colored blues. Wouldn't mind 5 of you joining me up on stage. Greens, right over here for me. You guys just kind of bunch up a little bit right there. Coffee colored greens, right here. Coffee colored yellows, you just bunch up a little bit right here. Come on in a little bit there. Yellow. We're having fun now, aren't we? Where are my coffee colored blues? Yellow greens, right? Any more any colored yellow? Yellow? Right back. Blue right here. Yellow? Blue? Okay. All right. Thank you guys very much. So here's what I'd like you to do. Kind of bunch up with me a little bit. They're coming to a bunch. Not just a line. We don't have to do this by height. Just kind of bunch up, and we're going to watch this screen right there. Okay? Y'all ready? You guys ready out here? So we fall into different categories. The Chinese used to describe them as earth, wind, fire, those elements, water. That 3,000 years ago. In the 1920s, we started talking about doers. The talking color red's the doers. We like to do things. We like to get things done. When we're not doing something, what do? We look for something to do. We don't care. We just want to be doing. Okay? Toffee colored greens are the thinkers. We like to process information. How many of you guys in the toffee colored green really like to be sure before you put something out there? That would be all. Okay? Toffee colored blues. You like to be able to relate to things. You like to relate to people, and you like for things to be relatable to you. You're not really ready to move forward with something until you've got that relatability element. Is that pretty close? And toffee colored yellows, we're the socializers. You kind of introduced yourselves to each other when you came over here. I didn't know you were going to be one of those. And looking around at what's in the other colors. That social element doesn't bother us. Is that pretty good? Pretty close? All right, let's talk a little bit more about it. Over here on this side of the brain, you're more task-oriented. In other words, you think about the task. We like to do tasks. We like to think about tasks. We like to design tasks. We like to design them as they are. IKEA furniture will eventually go together. Won't it? It may take 2 or 3 times to put it together, but all the time you're doing something. IKEA furniture has a process. And if you follow the process, the IKEA furniture will go together. Sound familiar? Over here on the right-hand side of the brain, we're more people-oriented, more interdependent. We like that mix from the social piece and from the relatability piece. We tend to surround ourselves with people that we can relate to. Does that sound familiar? And if we can't relate to them, sometimes it's just the opposite of that. We'll get somebody who we can't relate to, but they have traits that we don't have. Okay? On the front side here, we're action-oriented. Yellows, reds, we like to be moving. We like to be doing. We like to be in motion. We take action. And you know what? Yellows and reds, toffee colored yellows and reds, we don't really mind failing our way to success, do we? Because it'll come out all right, won't it? Eventually it'll turn out all right. Here at the back, the blues, greens, greens, blues, we like to take time to process information. It's important that we're sure before we do something, especially that has some criticality to it. Is that a fair way to look at it? So watch this. If you're working with somebody, let me just ask you guys right here. When you're working with somebody who needs a little time to process, how does it make you feel about them? What's that? Yeah, better hurry up. Let's go, let's go. What else? How does that make you guys feel about them? Okay, good. Very good. What about from back here? When you're working with somebody who's ready to go, 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 but you think there's more information? You just don't understand. Right? Don't rush me. Don't rush me. Can that be frustrating for you guys? Watch this. If you're on a team of people, and some of the people think, if you rush me, I'm not ready, and I know there's more information out there. Some of the people say, that's okay. No, it's okay. Let's just do it. It needs to be done now. And if it's wrong, we'll fix it. How many of you think that that produces conflict in almost any workforce? But watch this. How many of you think it changes the risk of the task? How many of you have been told to do something that you weren't sure about, but you did it because you were almost sure that the person knew what they were talking about? Okay, does that make sense? So these personality tendency elements really matter. We have certain strengths, and those strengths are really what we bring to the table. It's what we're good at. It's why we're picked for things. It's why people like us. It's what we do to get results in our area. So those are our strengths. Some of the strengths that Toppy Color Reds bring to the table were practical. And for those of you who have these cards, I'm sorry, I should have looked at this. Some of you have these cards, you've got the picture of the brain behind you. You're practical, strong-willed, decisive. We're a perfectionist. We're analytical. We like to get things right and get it right the first time. We're calm. We're agreeable. We're amiable. We're supportive. We like to be around us. We're talking. We're optimistic. People gravitate towards us because we're positive energy. Those are some of our strengths. So those make sense? Can you kind of relate to some of those? Good. We also have something called potential limiters. Now, in most other personality protocols, what do you think potential limiters are called? They're called weaknesses. The challenge is, if I tell you you have a weakness, you will either disagree with it, or some people may actually say, weakness, you're describing a strength. But what you're not going to do is pay enough attention to it to manage that. These are potential limiters. In other words, they are manageable if you understand what they look like, what they feel like, and how you can do something about it. So we're going to give you some tools for that later on. Some of the potential limiters, how I tend to react without thinking, what makes things difficult for me sometimes, okay? Let's look at some of the potential limiters. Potential limiters are never how you would see yourself, they are how others would see you. So where you see yourself as a doer, practical, strong-willed, you may come across as domineering, pushy, and impatient. In your profession, if you come across as domineering, pushy, and impatient, what do you think will happen to people that want to work with you? You're not going to want to work with you. What do you think will happen to communication? It'll be tough. You'll get in arguments. Over here, you may be a perfectionist. You may like strategy, but it comes across as serious, picky, or judgmental. If someone thinks you're judgmental, will they bring you a problem? If they think they're going to be judged on the problem they bring you. So in the profession that you're in, that's a problem, isn't it? That people, I come across as that way, I'm not going to get the information that I need because I'm not giving the information that they want the way they want it. Does that make sense to you guys? Over here, we can be a little bit emotional or disorganized or excitable. And sometimes people don't want to work with us because that energy that we bring to the table can sometimes overpower people. Yeah, give me a break, buddy. I just need to wind down a little bit. Your energy's driving me crazy. And back here, we may be stubborn, unsure, insecure, or resistant to change. And that slow to decide tends to be exclusive instead of inclusive. So these are tendencies that we can manage. Do these make sense to you guys? And again, they're not weaknesses. They're potential limiters. In other words, we're going to be able to manage those. Let's give these guys a hand as they go back to the... So those lenses that we see things through also create filters for us. The Toppy Color Red likes to know what first. Once they know what, they're ready to go. They don't need to know the how, they'll figure that out. They don't need to know the who, they're going to surround themselves with the people that are going to get it done with us. Toppy Color Greens need to understand the how. If there isn't a how, they will create the how before they move forward. Toppy Color Blues need to know why. Why are we doing this? My wife, her primary E-colors are blue over green. 39% blue, 37% green. Very strong blue over green. My E-colors are 26, 24, 26, 24. 26% yellow and blue, 24% greens and red. So sometimes she uses those elements to ask that question, why? So for decades, we've been married 40 years. For decades, she would say why, and the why seemed obvious to me, but it was what she needed to move forward. So if we understand that's what they need, would it be easier to give it to them? What do you think? So these filters, the toppy color yellows, we need to know who we're working for, who we're working with, who do we owe something to. We will actually change the way we do a task based on the who. And most of the other e-colors won't do that. Is this making sense to everybody so far? So we talked a little bit about these very predictable personality tendencies, but remember all four of the e-colors are within us. And picture this as a well. Some of those are very deep. So the red and yellow, for my wife, those wells are very deep and hard to get to. But the blue and green are right there for her. For me, they're all about equal. There's equal work to get to them. For Laura, her red and yellow are very easy to get to. So she can stay in those predominant traits, but you have to have a management tool to get to the ones that aren't your predominant traits. And it may be important sometimes to think about things that way. So let me ask you this question, true or false? Most of our problems in industry are related to human error. What do you guys think? Yeah, that's absolutely true. But there's some basic understandings that we need to have that go behind this. So just saying this doesn't really matter if you don't understand that about 90% of incidents are caused by something other than just the individual. It doesn't remove the individual component. Does anybody happen to know where this came from? I don't know what your education is. Anybody ever heard of W. Edwards Deming? How many of you have ever heard of lean manufacturing? Lean manufacturing, or Six Sigma process controls. A lot of hospitals are using Six Sigma process controls. That's all Deming's work. In the 1940s, Deming brought Japan back by putting quality systems in place. And one of his principles says in any process, if you have a problem, there's about a 90% certainty that problem is systemic in nature, not individual in nature. Fix the system, you fix it for good. Fix the individual, you only fix it for now. And yet, what do we constantly try to do? Fix the person. It's the person, the person, the person. And the why for that is, if you go back to James Reason's work, is our ego. It can't be me, so it must be you, and I'm looking for someone to blame and find fault with. So I want you to think about this. In your phraseology, I want you to think about the number of times in a day you talk about fault and blame. Even if you're not using those words, that's the way people think. So if we manage that tendency, we'll also understand that most people, about 95% of us, so that will definitely be on the test. About 95% of people react physiologically very similar to the same stimulus. Let's just prove that very quickly. When you sit somebody on a table and whack them on the knee with one of those rubber mallets, what do you expect to happen? A reflex. Why? Because physiologically, that's the way the body is designed. If that doesn't happen, what do you know? Something is wrong. Fair enough? Do we know what it is yet? But it's an indication something's wrong. What does frustration feel like? Just yell it out. Angry. Angry, good. What else? Stress, good. What else?
Impatient.
Impatient, great. What else? Annoyed. How did you guys know that? Because 95% of people react very similarly physiologically to the same stimulus. We're very predictable. Folks, if we weren't predictable as humans, stoplights wouldn't work. I know we're in Houston where they don't work that well sometimes, but if you don't like that, try driving in Cairo, where they decided they don't need it. The next piece is by a guy named Sidney Decker. If you want to know more about AERO, there's a book called The Field Guide to Understanding Human Nature. Sidney Decker is probably the dude most responsible in the world for the reduction in airline crashes. Pilot and cockpit command and control, all off Decker's work. All started with the Field Guide to Understanding Human Error. For those of you who aren't in school, how many of you have heard of the term just culture? Anybody ever heard of just culture? Just culture, Decker's work, right? So, Decker said, well, let me just ask it as a question. Do you think most people come to work and do a pretty decent job every day? What do you think? Not that they do one, do they come to work to do one? So, let me ask the question differently. Who are my nursing students? Do y'all come to work to hurt, maim, or kill people? Keep people in the hospital? Or do y'all want people to have a good experience and do well at your job? Most people do that. And I don't care whether they're mowing your yard, because if they don't mow your yard good, what are you going to do? You're going to stop using them. Go find somebody that does what? Mows your yard good. Most people come to work and do a pretty decent job every day. If that's true, then what Sydney said must also be true. That is, people do what they do at the time they do it for reasons that make sense to who? To them at that time. How many of you have ever done something in your life that made complete sense to you in the moment? And then down the road, you learned a little bit more, and it didn't make any sense at all to you. But even at the time, some people were scratching their heads saying, I wonder why he's doing that. It didn't make any sense at all. But we do things, and what I'm going to share with you today are some of the reasons why we do what we do and why they make sense to us. Is it reasonable to believe that things that make complete sense to a toffee color red may make no sense at all to a toffee color blue? Does that make sense to you guys? So what we're trying to do is mix up that information and get us to understand. And the last one is, it is not common sense. You should throw the term common sense out of your vocabulary. Common sense is a throwdown. Well, it's just common sense. Somebody just look, folks. We live in America. And if common sense was real, MSNBC and Fox couldn't sit next to each other. Don't they both claim they've got common sense and that the other side, whatever that is, doesn't make any sense at all? Right? Common sense is your belief that I should believe the way that you believe on whatever it is we're talking about. There's no such thing, folks. So don't blame things on common sense. It's just like blaming something on a human. If I say Rick doesn't have any common sense, that's not true. It just means that Rick had some information in that moment to make him do what he did at the time that he did it, that it made sense to him at the time, and I didn't know what that was. And I claim at the end of the tunnel that I wouldn't have done what he did. Well, no kidding, Sherlock, because you know the outcome. How many times do we judge the outcome, the behavior that got there, by the outcome that it got? How many times do we do that? That's without fault and blame. So don't think about it being common sense. Let's talk a little bit about systems thinking. There's all kinds of systems. In your education, you talk about body systems, physical systems, organizational systems. What Deming wanted people to do was think systemically. What Decker wanted people to do was think systemically. What Dr. Reason wanted people to do is think about the systems. So what I'm going to give you is a system called the task-based system. The task-based system says that any individual on any task at any time is surrounded by other people, programs, processes, work environments, organization, equipment. All the things on the outside of that system change, and they impact all of the other things. They all impact the individual, and the individual impacts all of those things. So the kind of cool thing about the system is it doesn't know where it's at. Home, work, play, it doesn't know. How many of you have kids? How many of you have more than one kid? Of the people who have more than one child, how many of you have one like you and the other one that's weird, different? Oh, that's about the same number of people. So we start to see those things, those personality tendencies manifest itself. Now, I want you to take a good look at this system, because we will react to changes in that system based on our personality tendencies. So let's just do a little proof of theory. Look at the system, people, programs, processes, work environment, organization, all the things that change around you. I want you to pick the one that your brain tends to go to first, the one you tend to pay attention to the most. You got it? You got the one that you pay the most attention to? On the count of 3, I want you to yell out the one that you pay the most attention to. You got it? Ready? 1, 2, 3. People. Wait a minute, didn't you guys just prove what Cindy Decker said? That people do what they do at the time they do it for reasons that make sense to them at that time. And we will tend to react to those based on our personality tendencies. But what if it's something else in the system that is changing? And it's not the one that you tend to pay the most attention to. We have to train ourselves to manage those tendencies, to see the things that aren't there. I'm a work environment, pay attention to. Is that the evacuation one?
We're good.
Well, we're not good because there's a beautiful dog back there that moves. And what do you think happens to my brain when something moves? Oh, I'm sorry. Go on. So all we have to do is train ourselves to start to look for all of the elements of the system, and then we can get predictive about where errors may come from. And when you can predict where that may come from, you can do something about it before the error is created. Does that make sense? Is that reasonable to believe? That if we understand the system approach, and look, I'll tell you, if you're teaching your 14-year-old how to know the art, and it's the first time they've ever done it, if you describe these elements of the system well, how many of you think there's a better chance they won't get hurt, named, or killed when they do it? But we've got to understand that system. But by the same token, if you're out there on a nursing assignment, and you understand what you primarily pay attention to, and you start seeing changes in the other, that can be a flag to you that something is different, and it can cause you to slow down and think about what you're doing before the error occurs. Now, where are my EMT students? This happens a little bit quicker for us sometimes, doesn't it? That snap judgment, we, talking color greens, we like to assess first and then act, instead of acting and then assessing. Is that a fair way to describe that? So we look at different things in this system, but you have to take a systems approach. Oh, what I would give if kids were taught a systemic approach in the beginning, so that by the time we get here, you're being taught how the system impacts you. So when you get under stress or high workload or time pressure, when you get under those traps later, you understand how to deal with it when you're talking management. That's why I think what you're doing here is so fabulous, because I think that's what Chris is trying to do, is get this pulled forward enough so that when you leave, there's just enough interest to make you want to do something about it when you walk out the door. And this task-based system is a way to do that. It's an interdependent system where people being aware of and managing their personality tendencies interact with other people, programs, processes, or with organization. People being aware of and managing. How many of you got a wristband outside with your e-colors on? And if you didn't get one, please pick one up. Do your e-colors and pick one up. Christine will have some of those later on. But we also have to understand that there are very strict definitions. Now, in the schooling life, you live and die by the definitions. Would you agree with that? You're taught very strict elements. In errors, it's the same thing. I would be foolish to stand up here and tell you how to prevent something that you can't define. So an error is an action or inaction that unintentionally does one of three things. It results in an undesirable learning condition, it leads a task or system outside of its limits, or it deviates from a set of rules. What do you think the most important word in the definition of error is? Unintentionally. So look, Chris didn't prompt me on anything, but she said if you bold it and highlight it, that their ability to recognize the correct answer when told would be very high. That was supposed to be funny. Funny strange, not funny at all. What is it that's unintentional in this definition? So that's what most people think. I heard it back there. Most people think it's the action. It's actually the outcome. Folks, most of our actions are intentional. So a pilot's sitting in the cockpit, and they're on the wrong runway, and they push the throttles forward. Is the action intentional? Yeah. They can't push the throttle forward unless the action is what? What is it that is unintentional? The outcome Do you think they drove to the wrong runway on purpose? But were their actions to get their attention? How many of you have ever been sitting at a turn light and you're waiting on the turn light to turn and the car next to you goes forward with the green and you actually take your foot off the brake and start to roll forward because that other car moved and you go, oh, it's red, and you slide your brakes. How many of you guys have done that? How many of you just don't know it's red? And then the rest of it. I had one lady say, I don't have a driver's license. But I've seen people do that and I blame them every time. The action was intentional. I intentionally lifted my foot off the brake, right? The outcome of being in the intersection was unintentional. That's what an error is. Most of our actions are intentional. Sometimes we deviate from rules, but it was an unintentional deviation. Your purpose wasn't to run the red light. Can we agree? I am deviating from the rule of that red light, but my intention wasn't to run that red light. So violations and errors are different. A violation is I pull up to that red light, I look both ways, and say, no car's coming, I'm going. Is that a different scenario? Does it carry the same risk? Yeah, but it's a different scenario. Errors and violations are different things. Events are outcomes. Errors are related to the action. So we have to understand those. Very often we frame the error in the event, and that's the wrong thing to do. Because framing the error in the outcome means we don't understand how we got there. And yet, even in your education, how many times do you talk about the event, the outcome, and say, no, we've got to prevent this bad outcome? How many of you guys heard? Don't overdose a patient. Well, okay, for those of you who'd like to know how do I not do that? Well, think about this and this and this. That's 18 things I need to think about. Which one of them matters on this patient at this time? That's what the system's going to take. That's what a systemic approach is. We also have, so errors and violations are different things. They need to be thought about differently. And really, if you're going to violate a rule, standard, or expectation, I want to understand why you need to do that. Because people do what they do at the time they do it. Say it with me, folks. For reasons that make sense to them at that time. And that includes why you may violate a rule, standard, or expectation. So I want to understand that. And we'll talk about how that happens in a minute. The last one is we've got two different types of errors, active errors and latent errors. Active errors, sharp end of the stick, almost instantaneous outcome. Turn the wrong switch, wrong thing happens. Open wrong valve, stuff goes to the wrong place, run the stop sign, get hit by truck. There's an almost immediate cause and effect relationship. We also have something called latent errors. When Dennis Quaid's twins were given that dose of the wrong medication, was that an active error, something happened immediately, or a latent error? Things started building up over time. It was active in the moment, and then it created a latent condition, didn't it? It actually had to be diagnosed later. So I want you to think about this. Yes, you will make some active errors, but the predominance of the problem will come from something that you do that's going to create a problem down the road. It may have been an active error to put the medication on this individual's leg that they were allergic to. But it created a latent condition that they had to fight for weeks afterwards. Does that make sense to everybody? So the active condition just created something. It created all kinds of latent problems down the road. We have to be able to understand all types of errors. What type of error do we tend to try to manage most? Active. Why? Yeah, we can see it. It's there. We feel the need to fix it. And watch this. You know who did it. Don't we? And what do we like to do as humans? We like to blame. So if I know that she did something, then I can blame. I don't need to worry about the latent piece. But that system that we talk about, people, programs, processes, work environment, organization, creates those latent conditions. And when we learn how to manage that, we're a long way down the road. So here's a little bit about how things happen. And these are just some generalities, okay? If you have some kind of bad outcome, there's about a 15% probability that there's something going on that you don't have control over. As an organization or an individual, we're going to give you that. You know, y'all have probably heard the data is spewed all over the TV. You know, if you watch any of the why planes crashing, you've ever seen that? Anybody seen the why planes crash on A&E or whatever, what Discovery maybe? They're always talking about pilot error, pilot error, pilot error, pilot error. How many think it's reasonable to believe there's something behind that pilot error? In almost every airline or airplane crash, what do they generally find? There's pilot error, and then there's something going on behind it. Some kind of systemic driving. So I'm going to pay attention to the 85% of these bad outcomes that have some kind of systemic driving or some kind of element that is under our control or the organization's control. And about 90% of those have something to do with an error. In other words, she does something that meets the criteria for an error. And about 10% of those are violations. But of those errors, think about this. You have an active error that results in an undesirable element of condition and then you fix it. So where am I talking color red to? Remember what we tend to do? If it's a bad outcome, we fix it. Bad outcome, we fix it. Look, I grew up an operator. I thought my job was to fix things when they went wrong. Even if they went wrong because I made them go wrong. Well, watch this. You have sentinel events, and these sentinel events are at a very high level, okay? Think about the sentinel events from a perspective of, if you have to deviate from a rule to get an outcome, do you think he wants to know about that? What do you think? Absolutely he does. Then he can fix the system. But if you don't tell him, because every time it happens he calls it a violation, then you're going to stop telling him about it. Folks, I will tell you, in high-risk industries, this is one of the predominant issues, is that we so mixed up errors and violations that I won't tell him when I had to deviate from a rule. That I won't tell him when I led the system outside of limits and had to bring it back in. And I won't tell him because the last time I did it, he said, you violated the rule and I'm going to do something to you about it. We had a funny chat. 9 o'clock, that's when we're starting. Coming after 9, violate the rule. The reality is, there may be a whole bunch of reasons why 9 o'clock didn't happen. I don't know what those systemic problems are. What I know is you're here now, fair enough. And that's what's important. Over here on the right-hand side, so can I have a systemically driven violation? Can the system force somebody to knowingly go outside of the rule? What do you think? Where are my paramedics again? If you pull up behind somebody in the left-hand turn lane, and the only way for you to get to the intersection is for them to move, what do you want them to move? You want them to move. Even though the light's red, you want them to move? Is that a systemically driven violation? Are they consciously, intentionally outside the rule of the road? Is there a real good reason for that? Yes, there is. So we can have systemically driven violations. Would you like to know if they've got a systemically driven violation? Of course you would. Because how do people make the decision as to whether they're going to violate a rule if there's a systemic driver? And that's the risk to themselves and others. If they don't think they'll get caught, if they think it's the right thing to do, if they think it's the necessary thing to do. But the reality is that ambulance, scaring them out of that space, they're going to run that red light. So we have to understand what those systemic drivers. Over here on the right-hand side are about 10% of things that happen are what we call isolated. I'm a little bit of a klutz. And I will tend to trip over things like the lines on this stage. Please don't go repaint the stage when I trip over the line. Because about 10% of things are going to be isolated with no systemic drivers. If I step off a curb and twist my ankle, please don't go change all of the curbs out. It's not worth it because when you do that, somebody will trip over the flat space and then what are you going to do? So maybe you see somebody trip on the line in a parking lot. Doesn't mean you go. And the further north you go, the more of those things that you tend to have. Okay? We were fearful that there may be some threat of sleep because it was going to be below 50 degrees, so apparently Chris thought if it was 48, we'd get sleep.
Well, my house.
But I want you to look at this. I call this the little red box. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, I do call this the little red box, are what we call isolated violations. He chooses to be outside the rule, standard or process. And there's no systemic driver, it's just a personal choice. But I want you to look at the size of that box. How big is it? About what percentage does it represent? Around 1% of the total population. How do we tend to treat all deviations? Right? How many of you have teenage kids? If they come in late, well, how do we tend to treat? I think it's an isolated violation, right? It's just what we do.
They don't come in late.
I forgot the audience, right? So let's talk a little bit about Swiss cheese. Now, years ago, when Reason was writing his book, he said, we put layers of protection between some kind of danger or hazard or cause and some bad outcome. And those layers of protection may be rules. They may be something physical. If you had to look at this Swiss cheese, which ones do you think are more effective, engineered or individual? More effective layers of cheese. Engineered. They're more predictable, they're hard, they're fast, there's fewer holes in them, they don't move very much. Where do we try and fix most of our problems? With the people, at the individual level, which moves a lot. They vary from day to day. Ask for a little brutal honesty. How many of you just didn't sleep well last night? So if you look around at that, how many of you think that there's a potential in the field that not sleeping well can impact your decision making? There's 30 or 40% of us that fell into that category. That barrier, that weak individual barrier of rest, didn't work for most of us. Okay? The reality is that failed barriers can't be root causes. I can't blame the lack of rest. This organization needs to have something in place that recognizes fatigue. Because the challenge is, a fatigued individual is the last person to recognize what? Fatigue. Why? Because fatigue by its very nature does things to your brain and your body that keep you from recognizing that you are fatigued. So if the organization doesn't have something to recognize it, is that a systemic problem or an individual problem? Individual. Is the individual still going to make the error? Sure. But there's probably some systemic drivers. We put layers of protection in place. There's a simple way to think about the Swiss cheese. As I'm driving down the road, there's three types of layers of protection: engineered, physical, administrative, and individual. As I'm driving down the road, you got the white line on the side of the road. Is that white line a barrier or a piece of cheese? What do you think? They're both equivalent. What do you think? Is it a barrier of some kind? Is it engineered, administrative, or individual?
Engineered.
It's administrative. And here's why. I tell you when you're 16 not to cross the white line. Are there signs all along the road that say, don't cross the white line? Are there signs out there? I tell you when you're 16, and then I expect you just to believe you don't cross the white line. I expect that you'll follow that administrative rule. Next thing is, y'all see all the rumble strips down here? Are the rumble strips a barrier? Are they engineered or physical, administrative, or individual? They're administrative. I can drive on those rumble strips till you go crazy. Please stop. What do they do? What are they there to do?
Wake up people?
Yeah, they're there to warn you when you're off the road, aren't they? Are they there to stop you from going off the road? No, the guardrail does that, doesn't it? Guardrail. Individual, engineered, or administrative. Those are engineered. So if I'm driving down the road and I cross the white line, I cross the rumble strips, I hit the guardrail, the car crashes through the guardrail and is totaled at the bottom of the hill. Is the reason why my car is wrecked because the guardrail broke? No, because failed barriers can't be root causes. I've got to find out why they drove the car off the road and went through those administrative barriers. And I don't know what that is until I pull the string and look, but it gets a little bit more complicated. And that is that we create those barriers with the belief that they will work for us. But we also analyze problems with the belief that we understand the problem. And it falls directly on personality tendency lines. How many of you guys, when people are solving a problem, had someone tell you, here's the problem, here's what caused it, here's what I want you to go fix. There was no analysis. They just, their gut says, this is what caused it, now go fix that. How many of you have experienced that? Okay? A little bit. What happens to the corrective actions for that problem if they're wrong? Yeah. Can we create a problem of a different type? You know, years and years ago, there weren't barricades that went down when you come to a railroad train. And then somebody said, look, we need to put a physical barrier here because people keep misjudging trains. So what do you think happened to the number of cars that got hit by trains when we put those things? What do you think happened to the number of cars getting hit by trains? Up or down?
Down.
Down. It's exactly what you would expect. Here was the problem. Emergency equipment also got stopped by those same barriers. So what they did is they installed them so that an emergency vehicle could get through. They installed them with holes in the barriers. So what did cars do? They went through too, but here's the problem. What did the ambulance do? It went through. And then what happened to ambulances? What were the only things getting hit by trains? Ambulances and fire trucks. So now what do they do with those guardrails or train tracks? They put them down and say, look, you got to find another route. Or you got to sit there. What we don't want the ambulance to do is cause a problem of a different type by doing what? By blowing through it and trying to beat the train. Because you're not just responsible for your life in your car, are you? You're responsible for the life of the person in the back. You're responsible for the other EMT and EMS support personnel. And you're responsible for the family of all of those people. And we don't want to put that on a decision that could be rushed. How many think it's reasonable to believe that given that scenario where they can drive around the barriers, that choice will be made based on personality tendencies? That makes sense? For some of us, absolutely would not do it. Others would say, I can make it. Do we really want lives to be dependent on that? Or do we want to understand what goes behind it? Am I getting too deep for you guys? Okay. So now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about things called performance modes. Performance modes are mental models that we use to do things. And in the 1960s, two researchers watched thousands and thousands and thousands of people do things. And they determined there's not 4 billion or 6 billion mental models, there's 3. And we shift in and out of them all day long. And they relate to this person on this task at this time. They have nothing to do with how many times an organization's done something. They have nothing to do with how many times business has done something. It's about this person on this task at this time. So those performance modes are related to the task at hand. So we're hired to do an occupation. Maybe you're in EMS, maybe you're a nurse, maybe you're a doctor, maybe you're a support person or a janitor or an admissions person. That's your occupation. That doesn't mean you have to be good at everything in that occupation. Some of those occupations have jobs. A nurse has to dispense medication. An ambulance driver has to drive the ambulance. But how many of you think it's reasonable to believe that every time you get in that ambulance, it's a different drive? Does that make sense? And every patient you treat is meaning the tasks are different. So if I'm asking you to dispense medication, that medication has to match the patient, it has to match what the doctor said, and it has to be delivered appropriately. Those are the steps in that task. So when we talk about advanced error reduction in organization, it helps us understand things at the task and step level. Folks, people get hurt, maimed, and killed in industry at the task and step level, not at the job and occupation level. Does that make sense? So we have to think about that at the task level. That system, people, programs, processes, work environment, organization, equipment, that all happens at the task level. So that as it adjusts on that task, we can adjust with it. Let me give you some of the characteristics. The first one is called skill-based performance mode. Skill-based performance mode, these are things we do out of habit, not thinking, using low or no conscious thought. You have to have done it greater than 50 times over a short period of time. The it is a task. So think about this. How many of you have ever been driving home and you pull into your driveway but you don't remember turning into your neighborhood? Anybody ever done that? Home, work, home, work, home, work, home, work, home. Now, have anybody ever been asked, hey, would you mind picking up some bread and beans on the way home? But when that butt hits that seat in that parking lot, where's that car going to go? Oh, unless you change that task. And that's a different task. It's parking lot to store to be now, bin on a checker to car, different route home. Does that sound like a different task when I break it down to the step level? So skill-based says, hey, I've done this greater than 50 to 100 times over a short period of time, and I can do it with low or no conscious thought. In other words, it's been engaged enough. But if every patient is a little bit different, what's the probability a nurse gets into skill-based performance? High or low? Very low, because each thing you do to each patient is different each time. So that means you're not operating at an error rate of about 1 in 1,000, which is the baseline error rate for skill-based performance. That'd be pretty good if we could do that. That's where we think we are all the time, because we treat ourselves like we're skilled, and therefore we're there, therefore the error rate is low. The second element is called rule-based. In rule-based performance mode, there's a rule, and you know there's a rule. Do you have to know the rule? Yeah. How many rules you guys have in what you're learning? 40, 11, 100? Okay. Can anybody know all of those rules? Are there times that you need to access those rules? What do you think? Right? And if you have that rule and you access it, your error rate's about 1 in 100. So about 1% error rate. If you were to tell your patients that coming in, you got a 1% error rate, you know, there's about a 99% chance we're going to get you there, get you good, and get you out of this hospital. What do you think they'd say? Do you think 99% would be acceptable to them? What do you think? No. Because they want to be part of the what? Part of the hundreds of people that go home and you don't hurt any more than they already hurt. Remember, most people come to you because they already got a problem. Do you agree? Not a lot of people walk into the hospital or get in the ambulance and look, need a ride. Ambulance is the new Uber. But the last one is what I want you to pay attention to. It's called knowledge-based, and I want you to be careful. It's actually a lack of knowledge. Knowledge-based is when you don't know what you don't know. And I want to give you a set of triggers for knowledge-based performance mode. It's when you don't know what you don't know, but it is a lack of knowledge, okay? So watch very closely. Here's the first trigger for knowledge-based performance mode. Everybody watching? Here it goes. When I do that, did you know that my error rate is between 10 and 50%? My brain has told me that I have some confusion. There's a gap in my knowledge. It doesn't mean that I'm stupid. It has nothing to do with how smart I am. It doesn't mean you're not educated. It doesn't have anything to do with how educated you are. On this task at this time, your brain has identified a gap. It knows that there is a gap. It doesn't know what the gap is. When you hear people say phrases like, I think, I believe, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, those are qualifier words. And those qualifier words are your brain telling your mouth that there's some uncertainty behind the information that you're about to give. So when someone says, I think, I believe, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain, what are they telling you their error is on the information they're giving you? It's between 10 and 50%. Let's back that question up. What do you think your patients would think if they knew your error rate was between 10 and 50% of what you're about to do? Good deal or bad deal?
Bad deal.
Is that something that you would want to pay attention to? There's a little gap here. Where am I talking called residue? We've got to be really careful. Our brains tend to not say, I think, I believe, or I'm pretty sure. What we say, when we have a gap in our information, we still use qualifier words. Those qualifier words are absolute, guaranteed, And here's the best one. Obviously, when you hear those words, that's why it's important not just to be self-aware, but to be team-aware. When I hear those words come out of Laura's mouth, what I know is that she absolutely believes that her error rate is better than 1 in 1,000. But her brain knows her error rate is what? 1 in 2, 1 in 10. Is this effective information for you guys? I want you to use those triggers. So when someone says, I think I believe, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain. Where am I talking about with this? Here's the challenge for us. We say that about almost everything. So it's not a mental qualifier. We just have to make sure when we are certain that we tell people that there is a certainty. And that means we have to manage our personality tendencies. Do that. Does that make sense? Okay. So skill-based performance mode, rule-based performance mode, knowledge-based performance mode, which one would you rather be in? In skill-based, why? Yeah, because it's got the lowest error rate. That makes sense, doesn't it? What's the problem? You can't be in skill-based performance mode all the time. Are there tasks out there that you'll never do greater than 50 to 100 times over a short period of time? Are there tasks out there that will never be less than 7 steps long? They don't qualify for skill-based. But I want the error rate of skill-based performance mode, even if I'm in rule-based, or even if I'm in knowledge-based. I love that my doctor can tell me that based on the tools that he is using, that the error rate is closer to 1 in 10,000. That's something I can chew into. That's something I'll buy into the patient, right? But that whole not 1%, there's a lot of people out there that think if you talk about 1%, they are the what? They're the one. It's not the way we think of it, Chris. we think, 99% is good enough. That's not what the patient feels. But what's in it for you? If you understand performance modes and mental models, trust me folks, I blew through about an hour of understanding performance modes in about 5 or 10 minutes. But I want you to understand those triggers. What's in it for you is it can avoid you from having to proceed in the face of uncertainty. You will be asked when you leave here, if you are in the medical profession, to stop someone if you think something is wrong. And if you haven't been told that already, you're going to get told it very soon. How many of you, am I predicting that correctly? In the oil field, we're told to stop. In the nuclear power industry, we're told to stop. At Food Line, we're told to stop, if you think so. Everybody out there is told to stop. The problem is, we don't understand that uncertainty piece. You want to be able to use tools to reduce that probability. How many of you, just after today, will think a little bit differently about the knowledge-based performance mode because you know the error rate might be 50%? What do you think? I want you to think about it this way. When we teach this, we have to teach it as a 50% error rate. Because when I say your error rate is between 1 in 2 and 1 in 10, between 10 and 50%, what do you think toffee-colored reds and yellows here, their error rate is? 10%. What do you think toffee-colored blues and greens here, their error rate is? 50%. So if I don't teach it as 50%, I've got a whole half a group of people out there that think, hey, it's going to be okay. If 99% is good enough, 90% is still pretty good. So we have to understand that so that people will use the right tool the right way. If you use the right tool the right way in a given situation, you reduce the probability for error by a factor of 10. Got a brilliant animal in the back. That animal uses triggers every day. Fair enough way to say that? They respond to those triggers. They've learned those triggers. As humans, if we learn those triggers, for us, we can reduce the probability we have a problem. So triggers are these clues, they're signals. If you go in your house and the fire alarm is going off, what do you think? Is that a trigger? I mean, for the first 20 years I was married and then supper was done. But this isn't a video. But that's a trigger that something's going off. You smell smoke or something smells off. How many of you use your 5 senses as triggers? When you walk in a patient room, sometimes the smell will tip you off. When you're treating a patient, sometimes the visual will tip you off. So these personality tendencies or these vulnerabilities come with triggers as well. And what can happen is that sixth sense, that gut feeling that something's wrong, our gut is really good at telling us something's wrong. It is terrible at telling us what that is. It's good at telling us we're in knowledge-based performance mode. It sucks at telling us why we're here. And remember back on that slide, you can't think your way out of knowledge-based performance mode. So I have to use the triggers to apply the right tool to reduce the probability that I'm going to make an error. So we use a tool or a trigger called OOPS. When you find yourself outside of a procedure, program, process, parameter, or a situation as you expected it to be, what performance mode are you in? Knowledge-based, where the error rate is 1 and 2, 1 and 10. Would that define unsure? Yeah. So OOPS. When you find yourself outside of procedures, programs, processes, parameters, or situation you expect it to be, that is the definition of unsure, folks. Pay attention to it. Because if you define unsure, if I tell you to stop when you're unsure and get help, who am I allowing to determine the definition of unsure? Me, the individual. But individuals, people are fallible, and even the best will make mistakes. What if you don't think you're that unsure? Earlier we asked the yellow, reds, red, yellow personality types. How many of you don't mind failing your way to success on what they say? Most of us. The problem is, there are conditions out there that you will get in that is not an option. You have to pay attention to this trigger. And you've got to manage the tendency to do what your personality says. So sometimes I may not get all of the hows before I need to move forward, but I need to move because it's critical. Does that make sense? And sometimes you're going to have to pay attention to being outside of the procedure, program, process, parameter, or situation I expect it to be, because I understand I've got a 1 and 2 failure rate, and my tendency is to move forward, but it's the wrong thing to do. Is this going all right? Halfway? Good. Oh, more than that. So I want you to pay attention to this OOPS. And also you can pay attention to what we call the top 10 error traps. Now these error traps were developed after a review of about 5,000 significant events over multiple industries. But let's just do it at a very high level. How many of you think stress, high workload, and time pressure drive error rates up? Okay, so here's the big clue of the day. Don't be under stress, high workload, or time pressure. Thank you very much. Tip your bartender and waitresses, we'll be here all night. How's that working for you? Watch this. When kids are learning to drive, are we paying attention to the stress, high workload, and time pressure associated with learning to drive the way we did 20 years ago? Or we just almost throw them to the wolves? And what's happened to teen driving, even for teen driving fatalities over the years? They're just not ready for that. And I want to talk specifically. Any good multitaskers in here? Yeah, I've got some good multitaskers in here. Now I'm going to get in trouble with this. I want you to write down these 3 characteristics of multitasking. Ready for them? Multiple, conscious, simultaneous thoughts and actions. Multitasking is 3 elements. Multiple, conscious, simultaneous thoughts and actions. Okay? Anybody know what the latest science basis is for the number of humans by percentage that can conduct multiple, conscious, simultaneous thoughts and actions? Anybody know what that number is? It's less than 2%. So look around. If you think it's you. But here's the problem. This is one of the big tainting areas. These all feel the same. You can't tell them apart. You're told to be a nurse, you gotta be a good multitasker. How many of you in the nursing program have heard that from someone, maybe even an instructor? Gotta be a good, 2 of you? Or, okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How about EMS? How many of you have heard gotta be a good multitasker? Here's the problem. If you misread that and you believe that you have to be a good multitasker, you are going to fail, because when you try to do multiple conscious simultaneous thoughts and actions, what do you think happens to actual error? It goes up beyond. So if you started in knowledge-based performance mode and you're multitasking, What happens to that 1 and 2 error? Does it get better or worse? Better. If you want to prove this to yourself, I don't just want you to believe some guy that flew in here from North Carolina, was with you for a couple hours and flies away. I want you to go home tonight, or how many of you have ever experienced this? You've had to roll the TV back because you saw something go across the scroll, but you didn't read it because you were listening to the talking head. How many of you have experienced that? That should be most. We do task segmenting fairly well. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We're pretty good at doing that. When it moves to multitasking, what do you think happens to error? It skyrockets. So these all feel like frustration. When you start to outrun yourself, does your body physiologically respond to that? So what does that tell you need to do? Slow down. What does your body want to do? It wants to keep going. Is that common sense or counterintuitive? It's counterintuitive. Don't try to use common sense. I just told you to slow down when you got those. I can't just do that. You have to be able to respond to that situation. The next round is poor communications, vague or poor written guidance, overconfidence, and first-time and infrequent tasks. How many of you think it's reasonable to believe that in your chosen profession, you are going to come across first-time and infrequent tasks a lot? Every day you're going to come across one of those. The problem with first-time and infrequent tasks is there's a higher probability of what performance measure. Knowledge base, where the error rate is 102 to 110, high. Overconfidence. In overconfidence, we don't see the triggers that tell us we're in knowledge-based performance mode. Vague guidance, if applicable, when applicable, if needed, when needed, as appropriate, and desired, if required. When you see those phrases in a written guidance, the error rate on that step is 11 times higher than a step that tells somebody what to do. And then poor communications. How many times have you read reports of things that happened and poor communications was listed as the cause? Right? I mean, almost all of the events you see in the medical business have poor communications as some kind of element. Well, no kidding, Sherlock. What do we do about it? Communicate better. Don't use no double negatives. They're not very funny people. Funny looks aren't everything. So these put us in or keep us in knowledge-based performance mode. And then the last three, distractions, first working day back, or the end of week, or end of shift, those actually interact with other trends. So this whole distraction element is a big deal. And here's why. Distractions make our brain try to do what? Multitask. What percentage of the human population do that? About 2%. And most of them ain't here. That's okay. I mean, fighter pilots are in that 2%. We got any fighter pilots that chose not to be fighter pilots anymore and chose to do this? Not many of them? That's the type of people that do it. Now, can you get close? Maybe you can. But the person next to you, very small probability that if you can do it, the person next to you can't. So they're not keeping up with you mentally. Does that make sense? Is it reasonable to believe that different people with different personalities see and feel these traps differently? What do you think? How many of you think that time pressure, stress, and high workload can really be burdensome on some of the personalities? Right? Some of us actually thrive under those conditions. Some of us, it can almost paralyze. What about distractions? How many of you think it's reasonable to believe that some people are more easily distracted than others? So when we take the e-colors into schools, what we discovered is a lot of things that people couldn't understand with kids are actually driven by their personality tendencies. So when kids are taught to manage those personality tendencies, it's called e-colors in education. And I encourage you to look that up. When kids are aware of managing their personality tendencies, it completely changes their profile. More kids do more work better. They get along better at school. Graduation rates skyrocket. Bullying virtually disappears. Because we're managing those personality tendencies. And it's the same thing that happens in the workplace. But different personalities see and manage these traps differently. And in order to reduce the probability of an error, you have to know what tools to use. I'm going to give you just a few tools that you can use. And then I want you to try them when you leave today. So, the first tool is that wristband you have. It's called personal intervention. And a little bit of my story. I was a nationally ranked athlete for about 20 years. I retired from volleyball when I was 44 years old. And I retired because my knees and shoulders were gone, and I went from 6'2", 180 with a 37-inch vertical to this in about 2 years. And I just couldn't control it very well. Actually, not this. Because I've been using personal intervention, pause and play, to eat better for about the last 4 to 5 months. It's a way to control, to manage those personality tendencies. I used to jokingly say I swallow my depression, I swallow my excitement, or I just like swallow everything. I just make an excuse. Personal intervention, use of pause and play. And understand it's called personal intervention because it's about you. There will be times that you may not have enough information, so you would tend to not speak up, that you need to push your play button. And in that very same time that you push your play button and say something to me, I may have to push my pause button to listen to you. So personal intervention, these tools are physical. Physical tools force your mind to process the information. Doesn't let it process in the subconscious. It's an anchor that you can grab onto. And that's why you wear it as a physical tool. So you can physically reach down and push the pause button. My predominant need is to push my pause button. So I actually wear it with intention with my pause button close to my other hand. I really don't need my play button nearly as often. But some of you may need your play buttons. The top you color red, we need our pause button way more than we need our play button. Does that make sense? So personal intervention is the gateway tool. And what we'll do is we'll use it when we see changes in that system that drive the probability for error. And there's a list of tools here. And I want to pay specific attention to one. How many of you have an electric garage door over at home? I don't know who has a gas one, but I guess we still call it electric garage. How many of you got electric garage door? Anybody ever driven off and you're not sure whether you closed the garage door or not? How many of y'all are go-backers? You'll actually go back and look to see if it's closed. Now, is it usually closed or usually open? Usually closed, right? I gotta go back. My wife's a go-backer. Now, we live out in the country down about a 2-mile road. It takes some real intent to go to the Fisher house and say, I'm gonna go see if their garage is open. You gotta drive out in the country to chop, and you gotta drive down a bunch of roads to get there. That's good, the Fisher garage is open. Not my wife. She wants to know that garage is closed just in case somebody does that. I don't think we're going to do that. But I want you to use something called verbalized point and touch. And this is something you can use in your work every day. Verbalization connects your mind to an action. When you say, close the garage door, push the button, the garage door is closed. When it goes closed, when you drive away, what does your brain know? That it's closed. But watch this. If you did that yesterday, you close the garage door, you drive away. What performance mode is that done in? Skill-based, rule-based, and all. Skill-based, done out of habit, not thinking using lower unconscious thought. So it's not filed as a completed action in your brain. If you want to slow your mind down to the speed at which your body can perform, verbalize it. I will tell you, your patients will appreciate it, and so will your coworkers, because they'll know what you're doing. And you can tell them, I'm doing this so that I don't make a mistake. It slows me. I'm a very fast-paced person. It slows my brain down to the speed at which my body can perform. Verbalization connects that electrical system in your brain with the mechanical system in your body. And it paces the task to reduce the probability of error. Also, when you say something out loud, if it doesn't sound right, you're oops. Meaning you're in knowledge-based performance mode. But your brain can go so fast that you never see that happen. You always see it after the fact. Well, I wish I would have. Okay? So this verbalized point and touch becomes very important. And then stop and seek out help. Show and tell is, don't answer things off the top of your head. I know we want to seem smart, but if you're teaching someone, show them where you got the information from, so they can then go dive into that rule. Chris is a prime example. She doesn't take anything we say off the top of her head. She goes and looks at where it came from. I want to be able to tell you where things came from, so you can go look for yourself if you need it. Because watch this. If I answer things off the top of my head, what does that give you tacit ability to start doing on your own? Answering things off the top of your head. But you might be a knowledge-based performance study, and I wouldn't know that. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about how we stop work. Is it reasonable to believe that different people with different personality tendencies struggle with stopping work differently? Is that tough for you guys? You're talking color blue, right? That's tough, isn't it? I mean, things got to be really set for us to stop, or the process has to be really wrong for a topic color green to stop. And a doer, holy cow, it's hard for us to stop something, because again, when we make a mistake, we just fix it to go on. And a top room on topic color yellows, we just don't want to, we don't want people to think we're wrong. We have all kinds of data, about 600,000 data points of why people don't use what we call stop work authority in oil and gas and in nuclear power and in the airline. But in medical, it's called pause work responsibility. In other words, when you get to a point where you or someone else is exhibiting the triggers of knowledge-based performance, or the system is giving you indications that error rate, we want you to pause, and that's your responsibility. It's not enough to empower people. You have the authority to stop. You have to enable people. And that's what the pause button does. Now, you may have to, as a topic color blue, you may actually have to push your play button to pause work. It's not stopping the job. It's not telling a surgeon that you know more than they do. I mean, a lot of people will say that you have stop work authority. I expect you to stop work if you see anything wrong in one ear, is eligible to stop work. How many of you think that comes from my heart when I say it that way? I know I'm supposed to say it, so I tell it to you, but do you feel it? The answer is probably no. Folks, this is a big one. You have pause work responsibility. Now you have some tools to actually do that. When that system is out of whack, you have to seek outside help, because you can't think your way out. And would you rather pause and be wrong, or not pause and be wrong? And somebody gets hurt and you're killed. Personal intervention, it's your choice. And now you have the ability to use that choice. In a pre-task, you can look at 4 things: work environment, individual capabilities, task demands, and human nature. Those 4 characteristics are great discussion points. When you walk up on a scene as an EMT or an EMS person, are there any firefighters in here? Firefighter? Okay. So we process those 4 characteristics very quickly, don't we? But we process them. And the reason why we process them is we want to find out what that system is telling us when we come in. And any changes in those means we're oops. Oops means we're what performance mode? Knowledge base, where the error rate is. 1 or 2, 1 and 10. Is that we're stopping or using pause work authority. So once you understand this, it becomes a little easier. On your cards, you've been given what we call intentional communications. And we want you to start using these, because these actually tell you when someone approaches you, they're going to exhibit some triggers. Let me tell you how well these work. How many of y'all remember the Super Bowl that was here? Super Bowl 51. Remember when the Super Bowl was here? The 10,000 Super Bowl volunteers were given these elements so that they could interact better with the 500,000 to 1 million visitors that came to our city. So when you have somebody that approaches you in a certain way, and you're approaching with those tendencies, then I know that when you display some impatience, then I need to get to the point. Can't use brevity, I can't use stories, I need to get there for you. That's not how she needs information. It's not how she needs information. It's not how I need information. What do you think would happen? Or is it reasonable to believe? that the amount of times that communications is a problem in medical incidents could go down if we used intentional communication elements when we're doing the things that could hurt human. What do y'all think? Good news or bad news? That's good news. But the problem was, I wasn't taught this as a kid. They weren't taught this as early students. This is what we know now, not what we knew back then. And I hope that you don't go out and get tainted by those elements. So when you leave here, I hope that you'll try to start recognizing your performance goals, middle models. But it's even kind of funny when you see this happen in the oil field. You're in a little bit of knowledge base mode. And while it comes across as a joke, that realization can save somebody's life. The error rate's 1 and 2 for crying out loud. I think we ought to have a chat about that. Oh, you're acting very color red today. It may come across as a joke, but the reality is, I'm not able to give you those communication elements. We want you to use it at home. You know, if your sister or brother or nephew or spouse is taking algebra, or in my case, my granddaughter, and said, hey, Papa, help me with this? No problem. I was a chemistry major in college in the 70s, Southwest Texas State, and they tell me I had a very good time. Remember, they were right. I know algebra. Use algebra every day. You need to be good at it, granddaughter. Well, what about this one? And every word out of my mouth, I think you do this. I'm pretty sure you do this. Try this. And what did I know of you? I was in knowledge-based performance, but I needed to go get the rule to really help. So use those triggers at home, at work, and at play. Use it to analyze problems. Use the language and use the tools. Try this verbalized communication. Was the garage door closed? That's a simple one. But I've been told to massage your left knee. Is this your left knee? Yes, this is your left knee. I know you've had a procedure done in the last 10 years where they actually marked on you. Okay? They didn't used to do that. In fact, my first foray into medical, human performance, I was told by the administrator of the large hospital system, if my patients think that my doctor is so stupid that he's got to mark on you with a crayon to get it right, I'm not going to have him do that. I shook their hand and said, we're going to think you're pretty stupid when you do it. Walk out. That was 25 years ago. Today it's a standard protocol, isn't it? We want to make sure that we don't have wrong site anything. And wrong site things have dropped drastically since we started using that tool. And verbalization helps with that. So let's see. Do we provide you with some things you can use in your career? Simple thumbs up or thumbs down. How about some things you can use at home in your life? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Good. Did we give you some basis for understanding why errors happen? Is that good? All right. How about a few tools for managing errors? Did we get a few of those things? And then the last one, provide some science-based defenses against tainting. And what I mean by the science-based is don't just believe somebody when they say, here's how it's really done. Make them show you that they have science to prove their way is the way that needs to be done or the way that you were taught here. Because there has been a hell of a lot of work into what you're taught here, even though there's a hell of a lot of experience in telling you this doesn't work. Does that make sense for everybody?
Thank you, Rob.